Welcome to the Taxpayer Revolt. Today we are honored to have as our guest Lily Limón, former City Council representative and now, once again, a candidate for District 7 of the city. Great to have you, Lily.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to join me today.
Thank you so much. So there will be a new District 7 rep starting on January 7th, 2025. And I'm pleased to announce that the El Paso Taxpayer Revolt, without reservations and very proudly, endorses Lily Limón. So we like to say that from the outset for full transparency before we begin our interview. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Max.
We set a very high threshold for our endorsements, and you more than meet that burden. So, Lily, if I may,
yes,
let's start with your life. Where are you from? And tell us a little bit about your professional career.
Look at you. I'm from El Paso, born and raised in El Paso. First generation child. My parents came from Mexico about 1948-49. First to graduate from high school, college, master's degree in the family, but then my sisters followed along. My career was focused on education. A Spanish teacher, both at Eastwood and Hanks High School. Was there when we opened up the school. It was a beautiful time because we set up all the traditions that have existed now over the years. I went into administration, assistant principal, and ultimately founding principal of Cesar Chavez Academy, which was the first alternative school, true alternative school in the state of Texas. It's a model program and something that I'm extremely proud of. We couldn't save every student, but we saved a whole lot of them, and now they're successful people in our community. After that, I retired 29 years with the school district, and I can still remember our superintendent, Anthony Trujillo, saying, when you can retire, there's another life out there for you. And so many of us did go off and do other things. I became very active in the community, an activist in my own way with different activities, different organizations, and then ultimately decided to run for office. And so in 2013, I was elected for 4 years, 2013 through 2017, representing the East Ridge Mission Valley part of the city in District 7.
Excellent. Okay. And since that time, you've embarked on a different career.
We have two careers, actually. I became a teacher supervisor in the alternative certification program, which allowed us to bring people that had worked in other careers to come and become teachers in our district. And then I also joined a colleague of mine, and we opened up a political consulting firm that we've been extremely successful with over the years.
Excellent. Yes, and I know you've been involved in elections and been very successful at that.
We have. There's something about picking the right people to run for office and then helping them overcome all the obstacles that come up along the way. Having run before, we know the process, we know the system, we know how to get people out in the front of the camera, let's say, and then have them be successful in their campaigns.
Right. So again, Lily, the years that you served as district rep previously were from when to when?
2013 to 2017.
And who was mayor at that time?
Oscar Leeser.
Oscar Leeser's first term. And we examined Lily's record, and she actually voted against 3 out of the 4 budgets because of the tax increases that were packed into those budgets, actually voted against them in the minority. And we also know that Lily ultimately came out strongly against building a multi-purpose arena in Duranguito. She has always kept her word to us. That I can vouch for. For example, when it came time to vote on funding an architectural survey to create historic districts in our downtown in the Segundo Barrio, Lily promised us that she would support it. She promised the public that she would support it. And she ultimately supported it along with one other city council rep, whereas almost everybody else on city council broke their word and came out against it under pressure from outside. So Lily is not one to bend to pressure. She definitely has her own mind and is very independent in her thinking. and most importantly from our standpoint, stands for the taxpayer.
Absolutely.
Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. That's fair to say. Absolutely, because I can see it in the community. People at church that'll come up and say, taxes are killing me. And these are people that are living on one income. And it only makes me wonder, what can we do to help them? And so that's one of the reasons that I'm running for office, to make sure that we can do it. How can we lower taxes? When you really think about it, it takes 5 votes.
Right, and you are quite knowledgeable, because not only did you serve as a city council rep for 4 years, but since that time you've been engaged in elections and you've made a point of staying on top of all the city issues.
Right.
You know the budgets, you know the inner workings, you know exactly what's happening politically and financially.
True. And try to keep up on track. I serve on 2 boards for the city right now, the Fair Housing Board and the Housing Finance Corporation, both of them having to do with home ownership, or how we can make homes available at a reasonable cost.
Right.
Reasonable cost for people in our community. And I'm very proud to be able to work on those 2 boards within the city.
And that's unpaid public service.
That's right.
That's excellent. So let's talk about the upcoming election, and let's talk about where you stand on the issues. First, let's talk about you. I want to ask you some questions. Certificates of obligation, that's non-voter approved debt, and the previous city council issued hundreds of millions of dollars of certificates of obligation without going to the voters, so that El Paso now, the city, holds the Texas record for CO debt. This is debt that's going to be held by the taxpayers for decades. And financially, I think that's been a disaster for our city. A lot of that money was used for non-emergency purposes, like to fund cost overruns on quality of life bond projects. And a lot of that money was used unethically from our standpoint. Lily, where do you stand on COs? Under what circumstances should they be issued, if at all?
Certificates of operation are designed, or were designed, to be used when there is an emergency within the city that you need to react very, very quickly. It almost becomes like your savings account of a family, that you've got a little bit of money if the roof caves in, if something happens. We had a huge flood that, destroyed much of our area. That was a perfect example of certificates of operation. Certificates of operation should not be used. Obligation. Certificates of obligation should not be used for these we deserve, we want, we like kind of projects. I can only imagine if we had a true emergency, what would happen when we've extended all this money out there. We need to be very cautious, we need to be very careful, and really consider that has to be a savings account that we keep over here, but we just don't touch unless it is a true emergency.
Have you ever voted for a CO?
Never. Never.
Would you have voted for these hundreds of millions in COs that the previous city council voted for?
No, absolutely not.
In fact,
those were some of the we deserve, or we need, or we want kinds of items. No, those are not emergencies.
Right. Henry Rivera, who sits in the District 7 seat now, who defeated you in 2017, that was, I'm just going to say it, that was really not a very clean race. There's a lot we could talk about there, but that's not the focus of today's interview. But I will say that Henry Rivera voted for several property tax hikes in a row. He voted to issue hundreds of millions of dollars of CO debt. He voted for 380 agreements that went south. He voted for TERS as an open space. He voted for the arena. He voted for water parks. He voted to support the trolley. He voted for every boondoggle, every top-heavy, bureaucratically overweight project that came across his desk, without exception. And I think the taxpayers of District 7 need some relief, don't you think?
They do. They really do.
So the city has achieved something incredible. Under the leadership of Oscar Leeser and Brian Kennedy, they've achieved no new revenue for 2 years in a row without any new bond issues for 2 consecutive fiscal years, this year and 2025. How do you feel about that?
I think it's great. I think that's what real leadership is all about. And they, Mayor Leeser is so focused on being the mayor that represents all of the citizens, not special groups only. And that has made him probably one of the most popular persons in the city. I mean, we'll meet for lunch and every person wants to shake his hand. And it's just that personality. But deep down in that personality, it's his care, his attention, and knowing how difficult having these high taxes is on the community. And so, and then with Brian following right along, same mentality. This is something that they were able to do, and then able to get more of the council to join in. A little late for some of them, perhaps, but that's why we've had these 2 very successful years.
How do you feel, before I move forward, I do have to say, in the interest of transparency, that Lily has worked on their elections.
Correct.
Brian Kennedy and Oscar Leeser. Okay, let's just make that clear. Of course, we support Brian Kennedy and Oscar Leeser with all our heart and all our force. We love those 2 city leaders. That said, how do you feel about the job they've been doing?
I think that Mayor Leeser has always done an excellent job. He really has stood up to powerful, moneyed individuals in our community and has always had a very strong feeling that this is what I'm going to do. And he does it. It's what I call tiene palabra. He keeps his word. And Brian is the same way. Brian is such a friendly, funny kind of guy. But when you talk business, he means business. And he also is the kind of person that keeps her word. So when they say we're going to hold the line, they hold the line.
Yes. No, they're very honest and transparent in all of their votes. Firing Tommy, good or bad?
Very good.
Okay. Should there be incentivized investment zones in open space? El Paso is almost unique for that. We keep creating these TERSs that provide massive property tax forgiveness for the private sector, not in the center of the city where you have urban blight, and that's what TERSs are supposed to be for, but in open space where nobody lives.
I'm not in agreement with that. And I often worry the TERS are very, very focused on one person, one group of people, where they're the ones that are going to benefit. And so as citizens, we're giving up this taxes that should be used, and then letting those institutions or people or organizations not pay taxes.
Okay.
The other problem with it is we don't seem to have a system in place within the city that monitors that. And most recently there was that investigation. So I think we need to start there, because if everybody paid their fair share, it would bring in more revenue to the city.
Yes. Now, Brian, almost immediately after assuming office in January last year, took over as chair of the Financial Oversight and Audit Committee, FOAC, and immediately launched a series of audits. Audited the gas cards. You saw what happened there.
Yes.
Audited the P cards. Audited the 380 agreements between the city and developers. From our standpoint, that's heroic. These are things that have long needed to be done. How do you feel about his efforts?
Well, I think that he took the assignment of the FOAC and then looked at it and said, wait a minute, this is a very powerful board. There's a lot that we can do here. And he identified these, and wait a minute, let's do an audit on this. Let's do an audit. And before, the focus really hadn't been there. FOAC was just, they kind of met once a month or every 3 months or whatever, and really nothing of major substance. The only time that I ever saw something is when the FOAC committee decided to look into salaries, and then went and got these studies and then brought it through. And that's how City Council was able to get a salary increase. It's the only one that I can remember. But in this short time, there have been some excellent audits, and it really bears to mind we need to do more of that, because you really need to keep a check on the business side and the money within the city. And it's only being done when we go through audits.
Right. And I will say that Colonel Weston, I'm talking about Kerry Weston, who's the interim city manager, working together with the CFO, Robert Cortinas, who, by the way, is a candidate for city manager. Those two guys have done an incredible job of making the budget more efficient, making the administration more efficient, of trimming the fat and getting the budget down to the essentials in order to provide the taxpayers with relief. And so you support all of that.
I do. I really, really do. And you know, I worried when Tommy left. I worried that the mentality would continue. But once he was gone, then we got to see the true thought and vision of both of these people.
A dark veil lifted.
Very much so.
And then you saw certain people in the upper administration scurry away.
Oh, go away.
Elizabeth Triggs, Tracy Jerome. Enough said. In any case, there are two major philosophies that dominate on city council. Number one is the philosophy of Cassandra Hernandez, Henry Rivera, and Isabel Salcido, who are the last three standing, who embrace that philosophy, which is this: build it and they will come. We need to invest. We deserve more. We need to bond more projects, assume more debt to create more and more public amenities, entertainment amenities, so that people will want to stay in El Paso, right? So ballpark, arena, water parks, trolleys, all of that, right? The other mentality says that really entertainment projects, we should encourage the private sector to assume the capital risk and not put that in the backs of the taxpayer. And we should restrain spending, restrain taxation, so that the commercial sector will want to thrive here. Companies will want to move here because we provide a competitive business environment. And that is the way you drive the economy, by creating a favorable atmosphere for business. I will say that our population is declining in the city of El Paso, whereas Texas grew almost 15% between 2010 and 2020, according to the federal census. El Paso grew less than 5%, all right? And since 2017, El Paso has lost net about 1,000 people a year for 6 years in a row. We went from 683,000 people, we're down to 677. And a lot of those people are moving right over there. I can see it out the window, to New Mexico, where the property tax is a fraction of ours. Others are going to Maricopa County or cities in Texas where they can actually afford to maintain a home because of the lower property tax burden. So on the other side, of course, you've got the mayor and Brian Kennedy, joined by Joe Molinar and Art Fierro, and usually but not always by Canales. And these people are much more in favor of restraining spending and supporting the taxpayer. And these two mentalities really collide. A lot of the contractors and developers support mentality one, bond, spend, because that favors local contractors and developers. And others really, let's pull back so that El Paso doesn't lose its inhabitants. Where do you fall?
Two.
That's easy. I like your conciseness.
Well, yeah, the mentality of we deserve seems very childish to me. I mean, we deserve. That would never come out of a mouth of either one of my daughters, but I think it is a childish mentality. And it's a good way to do ribbon cuttings and all sorts of things. But ultimately, the taxpayer is burdened. I have a concern with paying for, let's call it a water park. And this huge water park, before there was a swimming pool, the community loved it. We have friends that they would go 3 times a week to the pool, bring their sandwiches, bring their dinner, have a wonderful time, and then go on home. Well, the new water park just became increasingly expensive to the point that they went there once. Before, for $18, they could get into the swimming pool, spend 3-4 hours in the evening, late afternoon, bring their picnic basket. Well, now the first time they went to the water park, no food, no drinks from outdoors, nothing, and it averaged out to $60.
Isn't that amazing? And to add insult to injury, of course, we pay for this through our taxes, and the 4 water parks are losing between $4 and $5 million a year. And some will say, well, they're public amenities; they're not designed to make money. Well, they're not. They're also not intended to lose that kind of money, right? And when you add up how much the ballpark has to be subsidized, the trolleys, the water parks, and other projects that, from our standpoint, are not a primary function of government, it turns out to be quite a burden. And of course, that's money that is not spent on streets. That is money that is not spent on fire and police, the core functions of government. And there's the city bonding, putting out this huge bond so that they can cover even their core functions because they're so overextended.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. And then we pay someone to manage the water parks. So ultimately, we really don't get any money from the water park, but the people that are paying for these things, because that money goes to the people that are running and operating the water park.
Right.
And so I don't know. Would I build something? Would I build a beautiful home and then pay someone to operate my home, and then they rent it and I get nothing for it? I mean, that's not real smart, is it?
No, it's
not. So that's why solid number 2.
Excellent. So glad to hear that. So let's talk a moment about your opponents. Let's name your primary opponents. They are
Alan Serna and Fabiola Campos.
Okay, Fabiola Campos, we have seen, has accepted $1,000 from Steve Ortega.
No.
Is that correct? No, I got it backwards.
You got it backwards.
Excuse me. Alan Serna accepted $1,000 from Steve Ortega. He's run before, right?
Yes, multiple times.
Yes. And because he accepted that money from Steve Ortega, we know, I'm just going to speak for ourselves, exactly how he's going to vote, like all people who take money from Steve Ortega. Tax and spend, more bonding, more spending, more investing, okay? Not with the taxpayer. Campos, we reached out to her, and she will not speak to us, nor will she answer our questions. And that, to us, really speaks volumes. We're citizen journalists. We can ask questions, including of candidates who are outside of our district, and we expect them to be responsive. We expect them to answer our questions. How do you see yourself in relationship to Campos and Serna? What is your philosophical difference with them?
Well, so I'm a number 2 and they're number 1s.
Right.
When you think about 1 over here and 2 over here, which I just said, I have not met Mr. Serna, so I don't know him at all. We have seen a few signs come up in the community, but really haven't met him or been to any event that he has been to. Fabiola Campos has been very involved with neighborhood associations, and I think that is her stronghold, that because she's led the coalition, that she would know more people. Being active in the community and really working with the community, I don't think it's the strength of either one of the candidates that are against me. And, and I really take that to focus that I know the area, I know the streets, I know the people, because I not only live on what would be considered north of I-10, but I worship south of I-10, and I know many of the people that are out there. Many activities that I work with and support are certainly in that area and throughout the city. Whether it be helping out at the migrant shelter, the Holy Family Shelter, which is out here near UTEP, whether it's working with any one of our ministries. I kind of feel like I'm an all-around kind of person that touches in different things. And it's not just that. It's, working with the El Paso Commission for Women, having served as a chair, being a member of the Delta Kappa Gamma Women's Educational Organization. I mean, I just really kind of go out and do a whole lot of different things in our community. And I think that's the difference. There are more little area, perhaps, that aren't known in a lot of places within the community.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And are you block walking?
Absolutely. We've already started doing that over a month. We've been block walking.
Excellent.
Yeah. It's a hard time because of the heat, but we try to figure out the best times to do it. And putting up signs and getting our name out there into the community.
Do you have any endorsements as of yet?
Well, yes, of course. We have the endorsement of Mayor Oscar Leeser and Brian Kennedy, of course.
So Leeser and Kennedy endorse your candidacy.
Yes.
Need I say more? Go ahead.
Well, I'll give you one more. Little Joe from Little Joe y La Familia, who was in town recently and has always been a good person, a good friend. When you start talking about people in our community, que ta fiero. My treasurer is the former county judge, Alicia Chacon. So see, I'm not only like right now with endorsements of people now, but people that have served in the Democratic Party for many, many years.
Right. And I want to talk about that for a moment. You're a lifelong Democrat.
I am.
Okay. I'm not a Democrat.
Right.
But that's okay. We support mostly Democrats. Democrats who are more conservative fiscally. I would consider you, because I grew up in the 80s, a blue dog Democrat.
That's
you were
right.
in blue. Right? The Democrats of, I'm thinking of, Bill Clinton, Tip O'Neill, those years, that were much more concerned with the plight of the taxpayer than, say, a lot of the progressives today. Is that a fair assessment?
It sure is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, excellent. So that's about all the questions we have. And Lily, I want to give our viewers the opportunity to donate to your campaign. How can they find you online?
Well, you can go to our website, which is lilylimon.com, and that'll take you straight to that. It's an easy way to do it. Probably the best way to do it because it goes through ActBlue and have all the information. It's very clear and transparent.
And people can donate using a credit card or send a check, right?
Correct. Yes.
LilyLimon.com. LilyLimon.com. And the public can also volunteer, correct?
Correct.
Join block walking teams.
Always looking for volunteers. Always looking for volunteers. And you become a little family that's out there block walking, and it's fun.
Right. Well, from our standpoint, ladies and gentlemen, this is a no-brainer. Lily Limón is by far the most qualified and by far the most closely aligned with our way of seeing things. And so we're proud to endorse her and hope that you will all go out on November 5th and support Lily Limón for District 7. Early voting begins in October, a couple weeks before the election. There will be announcements about that. In any case, Lily, such a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you for joining us today.
It means a lot to me to have you endorse me and to be on our side. We will work well together for many years.
Thank you so much, Lily, and we wish you every success.
Thank you.
Thank you.